Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs!
And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Ohayon with you on the Sick Podcast. Welcome to your Friday evening and welcome to your weekend. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Are you looking for the ultimate entertainment destination? Playground is your ticket to nonstop thrills. Experience heart-pumping gaming action and a world-class poker experience. Playground has been named the 2025 winner of the Fan Choice Best Poker Room at the Global Poker Awards. Indulge your taste buds at our incredible restaurants, then let loose with live music and electrifying DJs. Enjoy unmatched customer service just minutes away from downtown Montreal, right across the Mercier Bridge. Why settle for ordinary when you can have the extraordinary? Playground, it's all here. Visit playground.ca to discover more. We're also brought to you by Le Bittt Tibi beer. Le Bittt Tibi has launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for those hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, and 4% alcohol per can. Available in packs of 6 and 12 in grocery and dépanneurs across the province of Quebec. Ultra light, ultra refreshing. And finally, Betway. Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offer is available only for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer is not available in Ontario. You must be 18 years or older, and please play responsibly. Okay. Well, he's back from vacation. He never really took a vacation from the Sick Podcast, but he's back from vacation just in time to be sitting at his desk while the sun is shining. Thank you for joining me today, Mr. Stu Cowan. How you doing?
Doing good. I win the award for bad vacation timing this year.
You did win that award, just like the Edmonton Oilers won their award last night for the being the champions of the Western Conference. We're going to touch upon that a little bit later, of course. How can we not? It's the day after the conference finals just finished. But you know, we've been talking a lot over the past few weeks about who the Canadiens are going to acquire. Who are they going to acquire? But to acquire people, oftentimes you got to give something up. So I've been thinking a lot, and, you know, obviously we know that draft picks, the Canadiens have aplenty, so that's clearly going to be an asset to give up. But who are the players that you could see the Canadiens moving, be it for that second centerman, be it for that right-hand shot defenseman, or whatever other piece they could come up with?
Yeah, well, I know Chris Johnson reported that the Canadiens, one of those guys is Logan Mailloux. They're looking to move Logan Mailloux and one of their first-round picks. So that wouldn't come as a shock to me. You know, Mailloux, big right shot defenseman. You know, from the day, you remember all the problems that came after the Canadiens drafted Logan Mailloux with what had happened to him over in Sweden there when he was charged with the sexual case. Mm-hmm. From that day on, I've wondered if the Canadiens might eventually move him if they had a chance. And the way things are going now, David Reinbacher is playing a lot better than him and Laval during this playoff series. Mm-hmm. And Reinbacher is probably the right shot defenseman to look at move. As you said, you got to give up something, right, if you want to get something. So Mayo would be attractive to other teams, along with one or both of those first-round picks they have at 16 and 17. And, you know, Chris Johnson's a pretty plugged-in guy, and that's it seems like he also mentioned that last summer the Canadiens were close to trading Mayo for Zegras to Anaheim, and then they ended up getting Demidov with the number 5 overall pick at the draft, and that sort of changed things at that point. So yeah, I mean, you got to give up something to get something. And as we mentioned last week on the podcast, the Canadiens have a lot of things they can give up, whether it's draft picks or young prospects. But at this point, it looks like Logan Mailloux could be one of those guys.
So I've been spending, and this is no knock on Laval, but I've been spending a lot of time in Laval because I've gone to 3 playoff games in the past week. And again, I say no knock on Laval because it was just the traffic to get there. It was awful.
Oh, it's
awful.
You got to take the metro if you're going there. You're driving there.
I learned that lesson last night.
Yeah.
But so spent a lot of time, been watching the Laval Rocket, went to 2 games last series against the Americans, went to last night's game against the Charlotte Checkers. And, it's very clear to me that Logan Mailloux is exceptionally talented.
Mm-hmm.
Where it leaves something to be desired is the hockey sense a little bit. He just making the wrong plays at the wrong times. Like last night, he just made a dead giveaway while they were on the power play. He was the last man back, tried to dance around a defenseman on the blue line and breakaway for the other team, and it's in the back of the net. So I don't know how it really works for other teams, but I would think that, seeing how Logan Mailloux has his past, which he seemed to have moved from, also that he's not a part. The current Canadiens brass has no stake in his future because they didn't draft him.
Exactly.
His future, if he doesn't pan out, that's not really going to look badly on Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how closely other teams scout Laval and the minors, but you would think that just looking at his stats right off a piece of paper, they'd be interested.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be scouting leading up to the draft, right? Looking for moves. 6'3", 213 pounds, shoots right. 12 goals this season, 21 assists, 74 penalty minutes, brings that physical element. I know before last night's game, he was at center ice, a little bit of a skirmish starting up there. There's a lot to like about him, right? I mean, there's a lot to like about Logan Mailloux as a player, and it's just a case of developing, and it takes longer for defensemen to develop, and sometimes it takes longer for big defensemen to develop for whatever reason. But again, Logan Mailloux is one of those guys, and you're right. I mean, Ken Hughes didn't draft him, right? It was Marc Bergevin who drafted him, and then we remember all the hoopla afterwards when they made that decision. And again, you got to give up something to get something, and I don't see them trading David Reinbacher. And if another team's looking for a young right shot defenseman, it's interesting what Chris Johnson said about the possibility last year with Zegras and Anaheim. And then when they drafted Ivan Demidov, that sort of fell off. So if you want to, they're looking for a second line center, and that's their main objective going into the offseason. And it's tough to get one in free agency. You look at the free agents that are available, they're older guys. Mm-hmm. There's Sam Bennett, John Tavares. I mean, Sam Bennett, was reported this week that he's looking to sign with either Toronto or Florida. Tavares wants to stay in Toronto. I don't think that's going to happen just salary cap wise. I don't see how they can keep him. And if they, imagine if the Leafs go and get Sam Bennett, that's the exact type of player they need, right? Somebody who brings some grit and toughness during the playoffs and compete level during the playoffs. So if the Canadiens are going to get that second line center, I think it might be more likely through a trade, or as Ken Hughes mentioned at a season-ending news conference, and Jeff Gordon, they're not opposed to making offer sheets to restricted free agents this offseason either. And as Jeff Gordon said, he expects to see more of that this summer. It used to be for years and years and years, nobody did that, right? Until Marc Bergevin did it for Aho. But after last season and the success that the Oilers had with getting guys from, the Blues had getting guys from Edmonton, I think we're going to see more teams doing that this summer.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the offer sheet route or the trade route, because frankly, when it's an unrestricted free agent, listen, I'm a big Sam Bennett guy. I really am. I love him as a player, but how much money, just approximately, do we think he's going to get?
Well, he's making 4.4 this season, and you got to figure free agency is when general managers make the biggest mistakes, right? July 1st, and offer a lot of money. So you got to figure he's going to be doubling it at least. And it's interesting too. I wrote a column today when Brad Treliving was GM of the Flames and he traded Sam Bennett to Florida. The player he got in exchange was Emil Heineman, along with the second round draft pick. And now an opportunity, Treliving now in Toronto, And with Sam Bennett as a free agent, it's an interesting sort of connection there, whether he'd be looking to bring him back again. I mean, in Calgary, it just didn't work out for him. He was a 4th overall pick. He ended up as a 4th liner. He was looking for a change of scenery. Calgary traded him to Florida, and since then he's just exploded. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to give $8-9 million for a guy who I think it was 25 goals this year, but he has that compete level, and he has that little extra that he brings. Right, we saw that during the Four Nations tournament. Like, he's one of the guys in those fights, the 3 fights right off the start. He's a tough guy to play against, and those are the guys you need in the playoffs. And the Leafs really need a guy like that. But again, it always comes down to tax-free state, Florida. You're making big money. You're making more money if you're staying in Florida than if you're going to Toronto. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the summer.
So it's the thing about Bennett, and why I, again, love him as a player. How could you not?
Yep.
But just the dollar figure going to be attached to him for a guy that is, if you look at it objectively, he's a 50-point player. So it's interesting because you look at the Leafs as a candidate, and you'd have to think Marner's gone.
Yeah.
You'd have to think maybe Tavares signs. I don't know. I'm hearing them talk on Overdrive that he's going to take a 3-year, $4 million.
So he wants to stay there. He's made it very clear he wants to stay there.
It's how badly does he want to stay there, though? Do you want to make $4 million in Toronto, or do you want to make $10 million, $8 million somewhere else?
Yeah.
We'll see how bad. But to give that guy, when you're going to be bereft of 2 out of 4 of your core 4, and you had all these players, those core 4 is what got you to the playoffs. Is a 50-point player enough to get you to the playoffs?
Mitch Marner's a 100-point player, so if you're trading one for the other or exchanging one for the other, it's going to be interesting. As we mentioned last week, I mean, it wouldn't be a shock, depending what the Leafs do in this offseason. That core 4, I mean, in the regular season, they're amazing, right? I mean, it's a given that the Leafs are getting into the playoffs every year with those guys, it seems. 9 years in a row, I think they made the playoffs. Yep. And now, if you lose 2 of them, imagine if they miss the playoffs next year.
But that's it. So what happens to the Leafs next year? So I don't know if Sam Bennett, because, Marner's a 100-point player.
Yep.
Tavares is a 70-point player. It's 170 points to replace. Yep. I don't know how you can do that.
That's the thing. Charlie has a tough decision because getting to the playoffs is one thing, but they're just that core 4 in the playoffs disappear. They just don't have the grit and the tenacity needed to win in the playoffs. And Sam Bennett has that. But a lot of guys in Florida have that. It's not just him, right? So that's why the Panthers are going to the Stanley Cup final for the 3rd year, and I think they're going to win for the 2nd year in a row. They have a lot of guys that play like that. The Leafs don't. So it's like one Sam Bennett going to make that much of a difference. Is he going to motivate, the captain, Austin Matthews, to play harder in the playoffs? Don't know.
So all that to say, I'm out for unrestricted free agency for those reasons. I mean, there's some good players. I don't think the talent pool in unrestricted free agency is too deep this year, but just
TSN came out this week, right, with their top 50 UFAs, and the top centers, you got to look at their ages too. Sam Bennett's at number 2. He's 29 years old. Tavares is number 3. He's 34 years old. Brock Nelson at number 8, he's 33. Matt Duchene at number 9, he's 34. You go down the list. You don't become an unrestricted free agent until later in your career. So they're older guys. So Ken Hughes, since he's come here, has been looking at those guys in that 23, 24, 25, 26 age bracket. And that's where I think he'll be looking also, whether it's through a trade or through an offer sheet.
So I would be surprised if he doesn't get signed by his team, that Kent Hughes doesn't throw his hat in the ring of Mason Marchment. That to me is the Mason Marchment, Mason McTavish, Mason McTavish of the Anaheim Ducks, because that to me is a player who is very, very young, has been kind of like Nick Suzuki, getting better every year, and 3rd overall pick, the same exact thing that Kirby Dach was, and just the type of player where he's not very tall, but he's thick, because he is listed at 6'1", 220. So high skilled guy, hard to move in the same mold as Nick Suzuki. If you have 2 Nick Suzukis on your team, I think you're in pretty good shape. And the Canadiens have the assets to give up in an offer sheet without really, sacrificing their future, especially because he's a 22, 23-year-old guy.
Or the trade, as I mentioned earlier with Anaheim, the link with Anaheim last year with Logan Mailloux going there. So there's that. Obviously, Anaheim has some interest in Logan Mailloux already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny because Anaheim is always on the top every year. They're always at the top of these lists of the best prospect pools.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you mentioned it last week, was that you got to be careful with those things because it was 4 or 5 years ago that the Canadiens were at the top of one of those lists, and from the Athletic, and it didn't get them anywhere.
They did get the playoffs this year, though, in the third year of a rebuild. Where you look at Buffalo with all the top 5 picks they've had over the years, and they haven't made the playoffs. It was 12 years now. So it's that balancing act, right, of youth and experience. And Ken Hughes spoke about that as season-ending news cards. That's right where the Canadiens are now, trying to figure out that balance of we have all these young guys, and how much more experience do we need to bring in to help them out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I think it's clear that they don't have organizationally a second line center. I mean, maybe Michael Hage turns into that guy.
They're hoping that in the future, right? That's the hope. But they need somebody to get them there, right? You're looking
exactly.
At least. I mean, I'm sure Michael Hage can go back to Michigan next year, and then probably at least a year in the AHL. So you're looking 3 years down the road, at least probably before he's ready to be anywhere close to being a second line center, I think, in the NHL. But they also got Kapanen, who can play center, and they got Owen Beck. They got other guys that are coming along. But that's why I think getting like if Tavares was interested in coming to Montreal, to stay close to Toronto, if you get him on like a 3-year contract or something like that, that would make sense to bridge it until they get to the point when one of these other guys might be ready.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that, I think that and I'm sure they're not stuck to a plan. They want to follow their plan as best as they can, but things change.
Yep.
What if they get a call from the GM of they get a call from Kyle Dubas, let's just say, and he says, "Hey, I want to do right by Sidney Crosby. He wants to move. He told me your guys are the only place he would go to. Make me an offer." I'm sure the Canadiens don't have in the plans having Sidney Crosby, but if that happens, you have to shift.
Yeah,
you have to shift plans. It's the same way if John Tavares' agent called up Kent Hughes and said, "Hey, my client's really interested in coming to Montreal." You have to look at it, and if it works, it works, and that's one of those situations. So all that
Kent Hughes always says, every day he's trying to make his team better, doing something to make his team better. So, Ken Hughes is a smart guy, and he's got, I said, he's in a different position now. When he first came into this job 3 years ago, it was just like, trade all your guys, get draft picks, get prospects, get rid of, Tyler Toffoli, get rid of all these guys that were the veteran guys on the team, and just keep acquiring assets. And he did a very good job of that, and had a team that managed to get into the playoffs this year. So he's in a pretty good spot going into this summer.
I think, I remember last year we were all saying, heading into the draft, they have so many assets, they have so many draft picks, there's no way they could use all of them. And they ended up using all of them. This year feels a little different because of all the buzz around the team. But really, you want to talk assets: 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 3 third-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks,
mid-round first-round picks too, not late. They're both 16, 17, right in the middle of the pack.
Exactly. So you'd have to think that something is going to happen at the conclusion of the NHL playoffs, whenever that may be, or the week leading up to the draft, something might happen.
Yeah, I think it'd be closer to the draft because I think Hughes is going to weigh all his options and be on the phone, and it might even happen draft day, right? We've seen that happen before with Kirby Dach, and so I think it's going to happen closer to the draft, if not at the draft, where they pull the trigger on a move.
So speculation continues.
And sorry, that'll also lead into what they do in free agency, right? Depending on
that's it, of course.
Can't get at the draft.
So speculation continues about what the Canadiens are going to do on the trade/acquiring front. We're going to leave that to the side. And it's funny because I just, you want to talk about organizational depth. The Florida Panthers in their third straight Stanley Cup final. And listen, I don't know if, I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are paying attention to the Laval Rocket because that's how starving we are for hockey in this market. Mm-hmm. But I'd be shocked, to say the least, if I had any faith right now in the Laval Rocket to come back and win this series with the way the first two games have gone. And they just so happen
3 games on the road too. That doesn't help, obviously.
That too. And they just so happen to be playing against who's affiliate other than the Florida Panthers. Mm-hmm. So we got for the second year in a row, we got the Florida Panthers against the Edmonton Oilers. Stu, we spoke last week about lessons the Montreal Canadiens could take from the Florida Panthers. The beauty of if the Oilers win the Stanley Cup is who knows what the NHL does at that point, because there's not really the lesson to take from that is it can't be imitated. It's that, just get a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
I think like watching Florida and Edmonton play, if you're a Canadiens fan, I think it's a reality check just how far the Canadiens are away from being a Stanley Cup contender. Like they're a playoff contender now, getting it done. They showed it this year, but to take that next step that they want in this rebuild to be a team that can contend for the Stanley Cup every year, they're not close right now, right? I mean, you look at Edmonton, it's just like top end talent, right?
Yeah,
2 of the best players in the NHL on the same team. They're getting the goaltending now from Stuart Skinner. It's a great story the way he's been able to rebound and come back and turn his career around, especially in the playoffs. And then you look at Florida, just the depth and Barkov. I mean, they have the mix of talent and grit, and I think Florida's going to win again. I think they just have that extra grit that the Oilers don't. And their goalie, when Bobrovsky's on, he's on. But I think it just shows you that how much more building the Canadiens need to do to get to that point. In a 32-team salary cap league, it's quite remarkable that one team made it to the Stanley Cup final 3 years in a row, and the same 2 teams made it to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to just the building job that the Oilers and Florida have been able to do over the years to get to this point where they are, where they're where the Canadiens want to be. Like they're not only making the playoffs isn't their goal every year is to win the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I guess the lesson to take from the Oilers is you have your core. Obviously, they're in a bit of a different situation than the rest of the NHL in that their core is really just 2 players. But, you look at the supporting cast, and we saw it when the Canadiens made their run to the Stanley Cup final. It's pretty much still the same recipe. Yep. Is that you have to have a quality group of veterans around your core. I mean, Corey Perry's in his 5th Stanley Cup final in 6 years, and he's still a big contributor on that team. Mm-hmm. They have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's obviously not too shabby himself, and Evander Kane is pitching in. They have a good group of veterans who are very, very effective that are really pitching in, and I think that could be a lesson to take from Edmonton, other than, have the 2 best players in the world and have your goalie get hot.
They also have Brett Kulak, one of the guys that Ken Hughes traded away when he first became here as GM. As part of, I'm happy to see Brett Kulak. I always liked him when he was here. I thought he was underrated defense with the Canadiens. Also a great guy to deal with. But yeah, it's that depth that you need, and that top talent at the top end, right, in your top 6. And the Canadiens have Ivan Demidov, and they're hoping that he will become that. But I mean, we saw in the playoffs, like it's you don't just come in at 18 years old from the KHL and score 40 goals in the NHL. It just doesn't happen. But they're hoping down the road, and I think the Canadiens are another year 3 of the rebuild. I think they're at least another 2 or 3 years away if everything goes right from being in a position where they could be a Stanley Cup contender.
And it's funny you mentioned Ivan Demidov and him coming in from Russia, and then you're not just gonna click in the NHL. That's just not how it works. Mm-hmm. At least in the playoffs, because in the regular season he did. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because last night I'm at the game with my cousin, my uncle, and my grandfather, and my cousin turns to me when we left, and he goes, "I'm worried about Jacob Fowler." I go, "Are you serious? This guy just came from college to playing professional. This is the 2nd or 3rd best league in the world, depending on how you rank Russia and the AHL. And he came from the college ranks and got inserted into the playoffs. It's a completely different game." Yeah. He looked good in the regular season, but so did the Laval Rocket as a whole. Now so the Laval Rocket, Well, that's it. And now it seems like the Laval Rocket have met their match. And, he may have, Fowler may have let in a softie, but the game was already out of reach at that point last night. He let in the last goal of the game. And, it's one of those things where, I don't know, I didn't see the chatter of Jacob Fowler, if there was any. I know people were frustrated that Caden Primo was getting the net instead of Jacob Fowler.
I was surprised by that, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's surprising that the way Pascal Vincent has been handling it, just going one game.
Yeah, and you wonder how much say the Canadiens are having in that also. Like I thought the Canadiens would want Fowler to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Just like going back, they wanted Carey Price to play in the playoffs when he was in Hamilton and led them to the Calder Cup. I thought we would see Fowler, but I mean, I don't know how much of a juggling act it is with Vincent and how much influence the Canadiens do have on who's playing where. I know in the regular season they do. You tell we want this guy in the PK, we want this guy in the power play, we want to see that. But with with Fowler, you're right, you had that bad game. But with Caden Primo, moving forward, it seems when the spotlight gets the brightest is when he struggles, and mentally he just seems to struggle. And we're seeing that again, unfortunately, now in the first couple of games in this playoff series, while he's getting pushed by Jacob Fowler. Right, he knows there's somebody there looking to take his job, and he's just the first couple of games, it just hasn't been very good.
It's what was tough, and I actually did feel really bad for Caden Primo last night, was when he finally got pulled after he allowed the fourth goal. Fans started to cheer that Jacob Fowler was coming in. That, I thought immediately of how much we've talked about Caden Primo's confidence and the issues he's had with confidence, and to hear that, when you were just having, one of the best, when you were sent down, one of the best AHL goalies and one of the best AHL seasons, and everyone's saying, oh, maybe that's not the place for him, and he could be a guy. To hear that must have been very, very hard.
Yeah, especially if that's the end of his career in Montreal. I don't see him being back here next season. He's a restricted free agent. I'm sure the Canadiens will be looking to trade his rights or let him go, whichever way it happens. But I've said before on this podcast with you, I think the best thing for Caden Primo is a fresh start somewhere else where the spotlight's not as bright as it is here in Montreal. I mean, Jacob Fowler next season, I'm sure the Canadiens' plan is for him to be the number one goalie in Laval and play as many games as he can and see exactly what they got. And you're right, it's a big jump going from the KHL to the NHL. It's a big jump going from the NCAA to the AHL. Caden Primo won the Mike Richter Award as the best goalie in the NCAA. So did Jacob Fowler. Caden Primo's had struggles going to the next step. We're going to find out what happens with Jacob Fowler. There's no guarantees in the draft. There's no guarantees with young players coming into the NHL.
Yeah, it's
Sam Bennett was the 4th overall pick at the NHL draft. Didn't work out with Calgary.
I remember he wasn't able to do a pull-up.
He was a healthy scratch. He was on the 4th line, and they traded him for Emil Heineman, a prospect, and a 2nd-round pick. And now we're talking about him making $9 million a year in the NHL. So it's never easy making that jump, and sometimes it takes guys longer. For Canadiens fans who have given up on Kirby Dach, maybe. Look at Sam Bennett as an example of a guy that took him a little while to find his game and get where he's going. We'll see moving forward. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch. I love watching Sam Bennett play hockey. I just that mix of skill and grit and toughness. There's not a lot of guys like him in the NHL.
I wonder at what point, because you mentioned Kirby Dach, so we might as well touch upon him. Is I'm apprehensive on him. And how, just injury history, how could you not be?
Yeah.
But also when he did play last year, maybe it was still some tentativeness because of his knee, and that's normal to. But what I didn't like was that he was aware of that he was being tentative, and he started saying it in press conferences, and he didn't really do anything about it, and then he got hurt again.
Yeah.
So. Can he put it all together? But at what point is it, you could call it giving up on someone, but it's really all semantics. Like, at what point is it, do you give up on someone / do you determine that, okay, maybe this isn't the place for you and you need a fresh start?
Yeah, and it could be that with Kirby. I mean, the thing is interesting too, when Sam Bennett got traded by Calgary, he was 24 years old. Kirby Dach is 24 years old right now. And again, I don't know if the pressure of the Montreal market is as much with Kirby Dach, but just mentally to miss that many games.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, just to sit in the press box and, you know, every game, you know, I'm walking into the Bell Center press box and you see him in his regular seat there, the first one to the left when you enter the press box. And just mentally, that's got to be so hard on a young guy. And to have it happen again. And last season, I mean, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton were very straightforward about Dach during their season. Like, he's got to do better this offseason. He's got to be more ready when he comes back to start this season than he was last season. He'll have the experience of having gone through the injury once and knowing what the rehab takes. He'll know maybe what he did wrong, what he did right, learn from that. And going into the last year of his contract, he's really got to, like, this is a really huge year for Kirby Dach. And it'll be interesting to see, like, the injury excuse isn't going to roll as much next season if he's struggling early in the season. He's got to come back and he's got to show that he can play in the NHL and have a future with the Canadiens. And again, though, 24 years old, he's still a young guy. You know, Sam Bennett traded at 24 from Calgary. So you never know. And, you know, we've seen Kirby Dach 2 seasons ago before he got hurt when he was at his best and how he can play. I mean, he can play like that. It's a case of getting over physically. Can he still do that? And mentally, can he get over that hurdle of missing so many games and not having in the back of his mind that he's got the knee problem? And I think I might have mentioned this to you on a previous podcast. So I remember talking with Chris Nyland about that one. He had a serious knee injury early in his career. And he said, I was so tentative, worried. This is Chris Nyland, worried about my knee every time I go in to get a hit. And then I got to the point, screw it, I just got to play. If I get hurt again, I get hurt again. And I think Kirby Dach's got to reach that point.
Well, that's it, because, you know, you don't want to find yourself out of the NHL because of something you did or something in your control.
Yeah, not when you play tentative is when you get hurt, right? More than
exactly. Because, you know, you're hanging back, you're not really in the play, and then everyone's going full speed but you. So I think that Kirby Dach could be a player. I just the health is the biggest thing for me, because the best ability is availability, and he just needs to stay healthy. But it's really a matter of also, when he is out there, be effective again. Because remember, I think it was his first season with the Canadiens, when he came back from his initial injury, whatever it was, this guy looked unbelievable. Everyone was so excited. And then it was the first knee injury the next year when he came back. So we know he has the ability, but he really needs to get over that mental hurdle. Easier said than done. You know, I'm a guy who is talking on a podcast, never played professional sports in my life. But, you know, for him to succeed in this market, he really needs to do that.
Yeah, they're coming back from 2 major knee injuries. Not going to be easy.
Yeah. Maybe you could talk to David Reinbacher, because you want to talk about a guy who, you know, I kind of fell into the camp that I was like, I don't know about David Reinbacher, because he's gotten injured twice now. And at this point, he's fallen in line with a bunch of other prospects that are just some other guy that are going to have to show me. Well, the 3 games I've been to in the playoffs and the 1 game I've been to in the regular season in Laval, he's shown me I'm a believer again. This guy can play, and he doesn't, you know, when you just see him on TV or whatever, he doesn't look like a big guy. Then you see him on the ice. That is a big guy. That is a massive man on your blue line. So
he's also got a calmness. He's got a real calmness to him for such a young guy, and he's very mature. You know, from my interviews with him, and that very mature, confident, quiet confidence type of guy. Huge adjustment for him too, right? Coming over here to Montreal from playing in Europe. I think that this time in Laval has been really good for him, just to sort of get adjusted to the playing here on the smaller rink in North America and the lifestyle. The other thing that's great is that Laval and Montreal are so close. So it's like you're living in Montreal, right? So you're close to the team. You're able to go. You know, I've seen them at quite a few of the Canadiens games at the Bell Center. So you sort of feel like you're really part of the environment here in Montreal, and learning about it and getting comfortable with the city and getting comfortable with the way the team operates both in Laval and in Montreal. So, you know, I'd be shocked if he's not part of the team to start next season. I think that's definitely a plan moving forward. And as you mentioned before, and whether Logan Mailloux is, I think Logan Mailloux is the guy that they'll be looking to shop around along with their draft picks.
So speculation continues all the way till whatever draft day is. But the Stanley Cup Final starts June 4th.
Next Wednesday.
You know what?
Well, everything in pro sports revolves around TV scheduling, right? And this is another example. But as the weather, I've always said with the play, they just go on so long, you know. On X, I tweet all the time, like, this date in Habs history. And, like, the Canadiens won the Stanley – in 86, they won the Stanley Cup, like, a week ago. It was, like, you know, it was, like, May 19th or something like that. And now the season just drags on so long. And I think as the weather gets nicer and, you know, a nice summer night and you're outside having a barbecue or in the pool or going for a walk or doing something, you really want to come back inside and watch a hockey game after you haven't watched hockey in 6 days. You know, the NHL playoffs, it becomes a habit, right? There's a game every night, at least one game every night. At the beginning, there's like 4 games every night. And you get that sort of addiction to watching hockey every night. And then, now we're going to take a week off before the Stanley Cup final starts. And I think some fans are going to be like, nah, you know, unless you live in Edmonton or unless you're, you know, you live in Florida, or if you're somebody really cheering for a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup, which I'd like to see happen. I think Florida's going to win, but I'd love to see Edmonton win and bring the cup back to Montreal for the first time, back to Canada for the first time since '93. But to me, I understand why they have the break because it's TV, but it's just, to me, it's too long. And you got guys who are used to playing hockey every second night for the last 2 months during the playoffs. Now you're giving them a week off.
You know, I will say this. I think, I don't know why it stuck out to me that it was last year. I think because last year there was a set date on when the Stanley Cup final would start. And I don't think that was the case this year. They just wanted to give them a little bit of a break. But last year there was a set date. And I think we went 8 or 9 days between the conference final and ending and the Stanley Cup final starting, because both series ended kind of like this very promptly. And, you know, so to the 4th is fine. But what I just don't understand is that always the NHL, you always hear, whenever you hear the insiders talking, is they want to get this done. They want to get this done as quickly as possible. They want to get this done. Well, how is it possible that you want to get it done as quickly as possible, yet the NBA starts their season 3 weeks after you, yet you're at the same point in the season as theirs? That to me makes no sense. But anyways.
Season, I mean, to me, Stanley Cup final should be over by the end of May.
Agreed.
But that's
100% agreed.
That's not going to happen anymore, the way things have changed. So it is what it is, as the players like to say.
Yeah, that's it. All right, anyways, so speculation on the Canadiens and what they'll do will continue. Stu, I hope you can bask in the glory of that award you won for worst vacation taker, but it's really nice out now. So go enjoy the weekend. If it stay dry this weekend, hopefully. And we'll talk to you next week.
All right, take care.
That was Stu Cowan. I'm Matt Ohayon. Thank you very much, producer Shane. We'll catch you next time.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tb. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.